For those who just joined and for the recording, I'm Dr. Agne Straukiene, neurologist. I'm based in Torbay in a nice, beautiful, well, it's a town actually. I would like to be in a city, but it's not. It's a little one town that all the people who are just about to retire, they come and join. And generally my population of people that I look after are elderly people. So I'm excited to be at this beautiful MS Together charity event where I'm going to share how to manage stress living with MS. I'm also a host and a founder of BeewellwithMS podcast. So let's begin. So MS is really prevalent disease. You wouldn't imagine how many people are walking down the street and they are looking so well. They've got MS. I've got people who are running hospitals. I've got people who are doctors, running businesses. I have people who are cleaners. And so we're talking about MS. And MS is really prevalent between the women, more so than the men. And if you have a relative, so it's around 5% chance that your first degree relative may develop MS as well. And if you have a twin sister or brother, it's 25% chance that they may develop MS as the time goes. Why is that? We don't know. Is it a genetic condition? It's not genetic condition, but there are genes discovered that may be running in the families and people may develop MS. But it's a multifactorial disease overall. And there is a pattern that people who live in north, further to the equator, they have more prevalence to develop multiple sclerosis. And if we dig into the biology and what is MS and how it all starts, and it's at the end of the day, it's an autoimmune condition that affects the myelin, the sheet that covers the axon. So that's a sort of a neuron and with an axon, and it's covered with a myelin sheet by some unknown reason, whether it's a stress, whether it's viral infection that preceded, and then it's sort of a immune system, got into the shape and mode that starts tackling and attacking the normal brain tissue. Nobody knows for 100%, but the nerves and axons become demyelinated, and it obviously changes the way how the brain wires, and the signaling changes. It's much slower, it's disrupted. People develop various different symptoms from vision to muscle spasms, fatigue, cognitive issues, finding the right word to say, hearing problems, swallowing problems, variety of different. I never ever met identical person living with MS, even if they live and share the house. They do present in a different way, and there are different signs and symptoms. Maybe that's why it's so interesting for me as neurologist to see, a variety of different neurological presentations. But it's not so fortunate for people living with MS. And if we sort of dig deeper into the brain, how the brain looks like, we have gray matter, we have white matter, which is the area that mainly MS attacks, and we have deeper structures in the brain that are like a basal ganglion, as we call it. Comes under the name hypothalamus, thalamus, pons. Brainstem is our primary brain that it responds to our sort of immediate reflection and stress that we have, and then we have deeper side of our brain that goes into the neurons, and it's like a very tiny, small structure. It's like the size of that is a hair size, if that, to be honest. And it's a single neuron, and that's how it sort of looks like in this life. We all have that. You all have brains. I can confirm that, and you have a lot of healthy brains. What MS tends to do, it causes some plaques and white matter disease, but a lot of areas of the brain are untouched, and it's healthy, and it's worth looking after that part, because the healthier you are, the better you're going to cope. I always use this traffic analogy to explain what MS is. There are busy traffics and lots of junctions, and there are traffics that are slow because people are on the way, and sometimes it's messy, and and this is exactly what is happening with the signaling. When the myelin is lost, so within the axons, there is a disruption of course of the traffic, and this as a consequence causes a variety of different symptoms and signs that we pick up in the clinic. There are different types of MS, as you're probably aware of: relapsing remitting, secondary progressive, primary progressive. There are some forms of the primary relapsing forms, which, people have a gradual progression, and then on the top of that, some relapses. Forget about this. This is a pharmaceutical influence for this disease classification. They wanted to get drugs in the market, and you can't start for all of the patients. They needed to discover some sort of a selection, eligibility criteria for the clinicians to be able to start disease-modifying therapy. So that's how they come up with this classification. If you look into the biology, there is no difference between these different types at the molecular level. So very much depends how advanced the disease is, where the patients are in this journey, what do they do for their bodies, how well they look after their minds and bodies. To control the disease process and biology, there are disease-modifying therapies, and they evolve. You probably were not born at, some of the drugs that were launched, start in 1993, and we have it more and more. Every year we have at least 2 or 3 new drugs available. They're not for symptom management, they're more for modification of the immune system. They attack certain cells, whether it's in this bloodstream, whether it's in the lymph node, whether they are penetrating the brain barrier and reducing the amount of the activity, or sometimes depleting completely immune cells, So, and when we talk about the MS management is very, very complex, It involves a lot of things, from symptom management, MS relapse management, which is exacerbation of or new symptom development in the absence of severe infection or stress. People get more worsening of the symptoms. And you have to address these issues. And it looks like a London's underground, map. Really a complex issue that we have to deal day to day as neurologists. And for you as a patient, you come in, you have so many things going on at the same time, it's difficult to know where to start. Different MS services have different management plans, different pathways, different guidance, how they manage people with MS. But at the end of the day, we have a target, and we call this NEDA, no evidence of disease activity. We look at the present history about the relapses of MS, which again is an exacerbation of the symptom or new symptom. We look at how mobile you are, is there any element of the progression or not? We look at the MRI scans. That's how I start my clinic, looking at all the things, have the patient made a contact with MS nurse, has anyone report about the potential new symptoms, any changes in mobility, that I could accumulate. And then I see the patient and examine the patient and gather more information from people with MS. So, and when the people come to my office, they share their notebooks, sometimes it's really long one, and they say, oh, can you read that? Can you look at that? It's like, oh God, I got 15 maybe minutes now. Within this 15 minutes, I have to discuss symptoms, MRI scan findings, management, drugs, monitoring, side effects and all that jazz. And they say, well, can you read that? It's like, oh, maybe later, and I'll come back to this one later on. But, it's really good activity, really good to, I can see that people are prepared for the clinical appointments. It's wonderful. But I think what we need to do is we need to work as partners, there must be a partnership, and sometimes people come and expect a lot from you, and so it's like a look around, it's like, oh, I'm the only one that making the solutions to the problems. But actually, I expect more from people living with MS too, because it's a teamwork at the end of the day, because it improves the outcomes. And when we talk about the stress, such a complex reaction of our body usually comes from our primary brain, which is brainstem. By reflex, we go into the fight and flight mode, without thinking, without involving the cortex, which our executive function, and that could perhaps, reassure us that we don't need to be stressed, and that what happens when we're trying to manage the stress. The physical illness living, such as with MS, it's already a stress to our body, because it's difficult to predict what's going to happen to us. We have life besides the illness, and it could be a vicious cycle of things like not sleeping, getting stressed, having this physical illness. It affects our emotions. We get depressed and anxious. The sleep is disrupted. It affects the immunity. People tend to have more disease activity if the stress kicks in. So it's a crucial thing to get this right and under control. when we look at the big database, like MS registry data, like 12,600 people, the most commonest comorbidity living with MS is depression. Depression, anxiety is the top one. We know that very well. It costs a lot of money to manage for the NHS. It really, it causes a lot of trouble to people living with this condition because it automatically worsens the whole MS symptoms. People are worse than in contrast to people who don't have depression, anxiety, or stress. And there are people who's got 5 different comorbidities. People come with diabetes, cholesterol issues, blood pressure, depression, anxiety, thyroid problems, So looking after the health is spot on, is something that everyone living with this condition should pursue. And these 2 conditions, depression and anxiety, they overlap with each other, So you become anxious, then you become depressed, and then you depressed, and then you become anxious, and that presents in a various different symptom-wise, whether it's increased rate of breathing, tachycardia, like a over racing of the heart, sweating, loads of physical symptoms that kicks in. And some people develop functional neurological disorder, which is like psychology that drives the sensations and physical signs and symptoms in the body. And our role is to distinguish these conditions, like when they are dominant. Sometimes MS is not that dominant as a condition, but there are emotional issues and an impact on the condition that people present with. So what is an impact of stress on our body? So as I briefly mentioned, it does affect how the way we breathe. Quite often we overventilate. Having the stressful situation, it obviously releases, when the stress hits us, it releases the cortisol, adrenaline. These are chemicals that drive the whole physiological reactions in our body. Heart rate increases, blood pressure goes up, and digestive system becomes sluggish. People get constipation. Some people have diarrhea as part of the stress, and then you've got a lot of more glucose produced in your body, and it affects also the immune cells. The immune cells, there is a huge shift of the inflammatory cells in the body, and it's a vicious cycle. The more you stress, the more disease activity you have, the more disease activity you have, the more you become stressed. It's never-ending cycle, And how best control stress? What are the strategies, And I think it's an individual, approach. How you navigate, what's your body's like, what you like to do, in your life. And that could vary from music, having psychology therapy, psychotherapy, EMDR therapy. There are so many things around. Maybe you like going to spa and enjoying your time with your family or best friends. Some people find the resilience in exercising, hobbies, meditation, yoga, going out and exploring. Look at the animals when they are stressed, what they do. When they are chased by the lion, any animal, they run, they actually move, and we are historically animal species anyway. So when we feel stress, we need to move because that's how our body is built, and that's how our coping system is built, to move, to do something, to occupy our mind, to distract our mind from the stress management. And then when the panic attack starts, again, slowing down, breathing, knowing and recognizing that I'm having a panic attack, that's the first step in healing process. It really is sort of taking time, to explore what's going and bringing that awareness of your body requirements. And when we look at what is the power of healthy living, it's enormous. It really changes the quality of life, it reduces fatigue, less activity, less progression of the disease, and that comes as a diet, exercising, meditation, positivity, gratitude, social connection. Undervalued, underestimated pattern. People really need to be socially connected. And this is what we do here. We come after a long day, doing various different activities, and we try to become social. We want to connect. We want that sort of reassurance and validation. That's by default. That's our nature. That's what we do as human beings. And obviously, some people find some resilience in religion, spiritual world, and self-management, being independently, financially, physically, super important, and healthy aging, which comes with a healthy living anyway. And music it has got a huge effect on our brain. It actually improves the neuroplasticity. We'll talk about in a minute. Also, what we eat is super important. Our brain is 70% of fat. Yeah, that's true. 70% of fat, fatty structure overall. I attended actually the brain surgery as part of my neurology training. I needed to do neurosurgery. So I would be in the theater assisting, 4 a.m., 3 a.m., There's nothing to cut. Only suction movements are possible because it's like a jelly structure, So it's really fatty organ, and the fat control the balance of inflammation, and there are some risks of the relapse if we are exposing ourselves with the junk food, for example, which is full of the unhealthy fats in it, and that's really drives the whole inflammatory responses in our body and causes more problem, more obesity, more relapses, and poor diet leads to other illness such as cholesterol issues, blood pressure, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, polycystic ovary syndrome. So it's all sort of overconnected and linked. And it's really important to know the fact that brain is linked to our guts. And some of the patients come to my clinic and they had IBS and various different gut issues, before even the MS started. Indigestion, malnutrition, obesity, loads of happening, but there is a connection between the gut and brain. I call gut as a second brain. It's a lot of going on, and a lot of immune cells are located in the guts, and it's important to keep that. Probably you're familiar with the microbiome definition, which is a good bacteria, a good balance of the good flora inside the gut that keeps the momentum, keeps that that wellness, of the brain health in a very good balance, and there is a continuous cycle of brain influencing gut, gut influencing brain. Brain again comes to the gut, and controls the immune system, controls our responses. So make sure that the food is your medicine, that medicine is your food, So make it your medicine. It's super important living with chronic conditions such as multiple sclerosis. And what do all these MS-friendly diets? There are loads of around, and some of them are less evidence-based, and some of them there are some emerging evidence-based diets in place, such as Mediterranean diet, ketogenic, intermittent fasting. These are, diets that have got some evidence. The rest, like overcoming MS, Wall's diet, and all the rest, loads of fancy big names, in the world that some people are following. But what is the common feature of this? That all these diets in MS, they've been published, and it's a lot around on media. They are all low in sugar, they're low in carbs. It helps to reduce the weight. Loads of leafy vegetables and fruits, nuts and seeds that you follow if you follow the diet. Fish and real organic meat, they all recommend that. And healthy fats and oils, olive oil that has got full of omega-3 and omega-6, and finding this balance, so making sure that you cook and you make the food from the scratch. Be mindful whilst you're shopping. When you go to the shopping center, a lot of colors, a lot of sugar and a lot of processed food around, quick solutions, just be mindful, what you buy is really important, because that's how, you're going to drive the whole mechanism behind, your gut flora, your brain function, your immune system function. Usually the good food makes you feel good. When you have food, when you have mealtime, how do you feel like, how do you feel like, after you had your meal? Like, do you feel like sluggish, lack of energy? That's probably, because you haven't had a good food, or you had too much. Like, the portions are also very important, because you get sugar crash, like it drains your energy. Like, good quality of food, you automatically notice that you feel much, much better, and you can live longer if you eat healthy. Everything is going to benefit your heart, your lungs, and the rest of the function, and also mental and physical health. Good food contributes to that. There is a continuous link. Don't forget to have time outdoors and a lot of sunshine. We live in Britain. We automatically, by default, we have lack of vitamin D, because vitamin D comes from the sunshine. So it's important to live with MS and have an adequate level of the vitamin D. Quite often when when I do bloods, pre-diagnosis bloods, a lot of people are vitamin D deficient, and it's not good for your bone health. It's really a powerful vitamin supplement to help to absorb better calcium level, via vitamin D, and it all happens via digestive system. So when we live in Britain, we are in the north, far away from the equator. So we should expose ourselves with 4,000 international units a day, of vitamin D, and in particular living with multiple sclerosis. And it's nothing wrong to get your vitamin D level checked. It used to be a very expensive test, but now it's really cheap, and your GP doctor could check that level, just to see where you stand. In all the world, the primates would have a lot of vitamin D, a lot of sunshine exposure. Now we use a lot of UVA, loads of creams and makeup that women would put on the face, and that's a blocker from getting a proper level of the vitamin D3. And when we look at the prevalence of MS, as I mentioned, Canada, Britain, all the north, Sweden, Denmark, all these countries are, prevalent with people with MS, and that's shame. We think that there is an element of vitamin D deficiency could contribute to pathogenesis of multiple sclerosis, why people develop it, and there is a compelling evidence, that vitamin D can reduce the disease activity. There were some arguments recently whether it really does, but it's really helpful for bone health. Just remember that. Good quality of sleep is super important because it affects how you think, what your concentration is like, what your energy is like, whether you're having more fatigue. And you probably know already, if you haven't slept well, your fatigue level increases, your mood changes, you feel more anxious, restless, stressed, and then you start eating, junk food, convenience, sort of quick resolutions in the cupboard, which this is where you need to start clearing the cupboard, if you want to eat healthier, because that drives, all is interconnected, I have to say. And when you had a good night's sleep, it gives you clarity, you're more sharp, more focused, less fatigue, better mood, less anxiety, less stress. It plays a huge role, having a good night of sleep in wellness and healthy living. It's a lot of evidence emerging. Now, meditation. Well, when I started in 2016, it's never been something that you could just do that, quickly and by default. It's like it's coded in. No, it's sort of it's a hard work. It's like going to gym. Like, you need to allocate this time. And there is a link that stresses can bring on more relapses, and it's a very powerful tool to reduce anxiety and stress. And it really helps to manage the stressful events. It's also a powerful tool for depression, and in particular, relapses of the depression. It's an amazing tool for pain management. It brings you more happiness. You're more resilient. It's something that helps to rewire your brain structure. It's something that you need to do gradually. You start with a short meditation, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you extend. You will notice that your body will require more and longer meditation tracks and recordings, because naturally you will be just willing to be that in that present moment. It's not clearing the mind type of experience. It's not changing anything. It's just accepting the reality, that present moment, whatever it comes to you, not trying to move your thoughts or clear the mind from the thoughts. It's just accepting the thoughts and acknowledging and noticing that they keep coming like clouds in the sky, and it's okay. It's all fine. You need to find the meditation that suits you. Sometimes voice can irritate you, like, some prefer women's voice, some people prefer male's voice. It depends, and you have to allocate time. You have to agree that, okay, every morning after I've done, shower or whatever, before going to shower, I allocate 5 minutes to meditate. You do the same in the evening. Depends how you feel. Don't expect that it's going to be a miracle. The miracle comes, after meditating for 8 weeks, not less. And you have to persist. The daily meditation for 8 weeks, actually the evidence suggests that there is a change in the brain anatomy. The amygdala, which is our emotional brain, it shrinks over the time. It's real, it's definitive. You really take that control. And amygdala has got a prefrontal cortex connection, which is our executive function. It calms us down. Once we switch on the frontal lobe of the brain, we become much, much calmer. So by shrinking the amygdala function or size of the gland, we actually having less impact of the stress on the frontal lobe. And, the whole brain becomes much, much calmer. And we can see that on functional MRI scan. This is before and this is after. The redness indicates that there's a lot of metabolism, a lot of activity within the brain. And it's colored as a red color, and then it becomes much calmer after you've done at least 10-minute meditation. But you need to do that for at least 8 weeks daily to see the change, to have that change in your brain. The power of exercise is enormous. I can't tell how important it is to exercise living with MS. A lot of people come to me and say, look, I feel worse. I feel less energetic after I've done that. I feel awful. I feel really awful after exercise. There are some, I think, ways of people starting exercising and they're overdoing things, and then they have to pay the following day. They really feel exhausted. I feel you guys. It's fine. But I think what you need to do, you need to gradually build that sort of stamina. Start with the 5 minutes, maybe walk around the block, and then you incorporate more and more activities throughout the day, or do something that you really enjoy. Whether it's playing tennis, whether it's dancing, anything that you're going to maintain and you're going to repeat yourself 2-3 times a week, 10 to 40 minutes, or twice a week, 30 minutes, various different recommendations, but 2 to 3 times a week, 30 minutes, enough to do cycling, to do some aerobics, to do some walking, to do anything that you enjoy. It's going to rewire your brain. It increases the plasticity, and plasticity is forming new networks. Imagine that you have a brain with lesions, which usually happens with living with MS, and you need to create a new network that your brain would function as adequate, at the adequate level as before you developed MS. So what does that mean? You need a new connection between the neurons, and they are slowing down a little bit. The injury that's been done by the plague, really upsetting. By exercising, you're increasing the network, you're increasing the wiring pattern. It builds up new synapses. New synapses is a sort of a communication tool for the neurons to talk to each other. So you're automatically building up that network, which is amazing. It's simple as that. Numerous way of self-managing living with MS, and I go into digital technology. It's important to acknowledge that there are so many apps available in this world. Whether you go on the Google Store or iTunes, like Apple, so you find loads of happening around. Not many of them are for self-management. They are more so giving information. Self-management apps are more sort of symptom tracking, journaling, setting the appointments, setting reminders, communicating with your healthcare providers if they have an app available at the service. Well, it's been ranked by the researchers, and it's MS Care Connect, MS Body, iPro Habit Tracker, My MS Manager, Breathe to Relax, Lucid, and Headspace are the top apps that people with MS are using and enjoying that. So I would like to just to repeat myself what I just discussed, and is so the importance of physical activity, eating healthy, eating mindful, buying products, decluttering all the cupboards from the cookies and chocolates and all the sugar, the processed food is super important. Managing your stress, the easy way to do, and it's quick resolution is getting into mindfulness. You could also get some psychology input and learn CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's another powerful tool to manage stress and behavior. Loads of breathing exercises around, yoga, Pilates, sort of a physical form of the mindfulness, and mindfulness is not just, being, yogi and sort of sitting on the cushion and sort of meditating. Mindfulness is washing your plates and dishes, doing some housework. That's a mindful activity. Anything that occupies your mind and you're in that present moment is mindfulness. Dancing is mindfulness. Eating it can be walking can be mindfulness. And don't underestimate the relationship, being connected with people, communicating, chatting, buzzing, having that vibe, and maybe linking in with people like you, like living with MS, it's always, you've got this lived experience, with this condition. Nobody, even me as a neurologist, could tell what it's like to, that's why I'm coming here to learn from you guys. Talking about smoking, we all know is harmful. It's really increased the progression and makes a more rapid progression living with MS if you continue smoking. Not worth it even talking about this. It's no. Of course, sleep well is as we discussed. And what you need to do, you need to tackle the alligator closer to the boat, which is diet, sleep, smoking, exercising, all that jazz. And if you see a doctor and they don't ask you about diet, sleep, exercises, water consumption, other issues and stress and anxiety in your life, you are seeing probably not a doctor, it's a drug dealer. That's a joke, just a joke, okay? So that's my message usually when I go and present at the healthcare providers meetings, I always push this slide just to remind that really as clinicians, we should ask these questions about diet, sleeping, exercising, eating, stress management, etc., etc. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and I do run a lot of activities online. I now, just a month ago, started doing TikTok and presenting the experience I gain at my clinics. It's quite a joyful experience. My whole team, I've got like 4 people supporting my clinics, and they all have a laugh at me because it's not like a first take that you do the recording. It takes after 4th or 5th attempt I record the life hack. But I learn from you guys, from people living with MS, and I share that with the rest, my audience. But my focus is healthy living, healthy lifestyle, and I've been educating people within my service, my own patients. We do run healthy lifestyle clinics once a month. We talk about similar things what I just discussed today. And I try sort of reverse that flow into the larger community in the format of the Be Well with MS podcast. So tune in and listen to the Be Well with MS podcast. My agenda is to share this wellness. Okay. Thank you so much. I welcome your questions, to be honest, and see what whether there is anything I could help you. Of course, it's not. I'm not going to give you a personal advice. Just be mindful that this is a group session, and when you ask questions, make sure that you're not sharing your personal data too. Like, just be aware that you're coming into the public event, and So I welcome to have discussion now.
Thank you so much for that. That was really, really helpful. And yeah, definitely, I would recommend anyone to go and look at Agne's Instagram and TikTok and all the videos that she's doing at the moment. It's really great. And her podcast is really, really insightful as well. So yeah, thank you so much. We have had a few questions come through that I think, Hannah, are you all right to read out?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it become darker here, right, guys? Look how dark I am. Like, oh, I was so focused on the screen. It's like, oh, you are darker now on the screen.
Oh, I had to change rooms because it was so dark in the other room. I was very, maybe I should light candle. No. So we had a question about advice for insomnia. If your diet and exercise is quite good, what's the next step? Where would you go next?
To improve your sleeping quality, right?
Yeah.
So I think that you may have a perfect exercise and perfect diet, but it very much depends on the timing of exercise. If you do like a late evening exercise, so you're stimulating your brain, it then becomes really difficult to get into the proper good quality of sleep. And the other aspect, what you need to do within the 50 minutes from waking up in the morning, make sure that you're getting enough sunshine, because that stimulates the melatonin level, which is a hormone that is being produced in our brains, and that gives you a preparation for a good night's sleep. So when you wake up, in the morning, what you do, you go and have maybe your breakfast, or you may have your coffee, so make sure that maybe if it is the springtime or summertime, you do that outside and you get that direct exposure. So that's number one. And then thinking about your sleeping hygiene, what your room is like, declutter your room and make sure there's cooler temperature, various different meditation tracks to relax, some sort of anything that relaxes your body is something that you should pursue for, and just explore, why you're awake, what is the driving mechanism? Is it worries? Is it thoughts? Is it something else that wakes you up? Are these the symptoms of MS that wakes you up, and have a discussion with your own clinician? Maybe it's restless legs, maybe it's tingling, maybe it's pain, that drives that. And then there are various different supplements around, that people take to improve their sleeping quality, such as magnesium. Make sure that you're not exceeding 400 milligrams at nighttime. That takes the cramping and relaxes the muscles and gets your body prepared into the good night's sleep. Some people take off-label Leon Main supplement, which also helps, to have a good night's sleep. If you're taking the magnesium, make sure that it is threonate, THREONAT. There are some different types of magnesium, but threonate is the one that penetrates the brain barrier and improves the quality of sleep. So finding this balance, so really, making sure that even if you feel like you're exercising and your diet is perfect, try not to overdo things. Some people become so obsessed, following these things that it's too much on the body and mind.
Thank you for that. And just a supplementary question on that. What's your view on these like sad lamps, like lights? Do they work in the same way? Benefit from them?
I think you need to, for a very prolonged period of time, the exposure of this light. Nothing can replace the natural sunshine. Nothing. Really nothing. It's really hard. In the worst scenario, yes, the LED lights that beauty lights that you can buy on Amazon, and if you do that in the morning hours, not night. So from 6 p.m. we should all dim the lights, basically. We should prepare our bodies into going into a good night's sleep, Candles work. So these kind of things, just getting, because the computer, the blue light, the screens, like, all the devices and gear that we use these days on the media, like Instagram or TikTok, we scroll before we go to bed. We all do that to a certain degree, but being mindful, particularly if you're having problems, getting asleep and using all this blue light, as we call, in the evenings, just be careful with that, because it's difficult then to fall asleep because your brain is stimulated. You've got that stimulus, loads of chemicals released that to keep you awake.
Amazing. And I know, like, we've focused on good diet, but that's quite hard sometimes for people when they've, maybe not had that healthy eating pattern throughout their life. Like, any advice on how you might just start that, or any little changes you advise making first?
Well, different diet, different implications. So if people have already weight problems and problems with the diet, I'm sure they explored 10 different diets already, and they sort of coming here as like, oh, what else should I try? The simple steps, really, what we need to be aware of, nothing is better than having home cooked from scratch food, loads of vegetables, loads of different variety of vegetables, could be leafy vegetables, could be starchy vegetables, and a mixture of that. If you're just living your life and having only leafy vegetables, it could cause leaky guts, as we call, it's just another problem, with the gut. So it's finding this balance and exploring a little bit, what suits your body and how you feel after you consumed. There's no one diet that, that would suit everyone. You really need to do a bit of a research work here, Simple steps are, getting rid of all these processed foods, that you buy in the shopping center, and starting with just, having a potato and a good quality organic meat that you cook, whether it's in an oven, whether you however you make it, it's okay. Some people I find buy the recipe boxes. That's really convenient, and that's really good, if you're like just about to start cooking and doing something fresh, and it's really good way to start, to be honest. It's something that is,
I've recently started using one of those actually, and it's really good because you can see all the ingredients and all what it comes with, and then you keep the recipe cards so you can go back to it at any point. But I know like a lot of people feel daunted and fatigued at the night, but a lot of those give you chances for like 30-minute meals or very quick meals. So it's definitely a good tip there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So with the 8-week meditation goal, was there a time that people could, and obviously they'll do their best, but any goal that they should be aiming for as they get to that 8-week end?
I would suggest that you start with a 5 to 10 minutes, meditation daily. And after 8 weeks, you will naturally notice that you're into this guided meditation that if you skip for a few weeks, you will notice that you're more stressed, more anxious, more feeling down. And your body will suggest, what have you done differently? Actually, I start meditation, So naturally, your body will call you back, because you will notice that you're feeling much, much more under control. You have more resilience. All these stresses that come in, it doesn't affect you that much, So it switches off the sort of a uncontrolled reaction to stimulus, So imagine that this is a Snellen's. I'll explain you like model. This is, imagine the brain. So that's a brainstem. That's our sort of a fight or flight mode. We have a limbic system, which is amygdala. That's our emotions, And then we have a prefrontal cortex, which is our sort of a cortex, like a higher brain cognitive function. So quite often people go into this sort of a vicious cycle of the brainstem, inappropriate signaling, and they sort of respond and they react to the stimulus inadequately without, involving too much of the cortex, our thinking brain, and then sort of there is a continuous process between the cortex, limbic system, and the actual sort of a brainstem, which is our sort of a primal brain. And what we do with the meditation, we actually train the prefrontal cortex. We improve this signaling, and this prefrontal cortex calms down the limbic system and calms down this by reflex flight or fight brain. So you train yourself to respond better, basically, and you become calmer. It's difficult to avoid stress in this life. It's impossible. We're all going to get stressed to a certain degree in our life. It would be unrealistic thinking that we, I'm going to meditate and no stress. No, stress is going to be there all the time. And living with MS every day is a stress because you don't know what to expect, But by improving your coping strategies, you actually train your brain to not react in a way that actually brings more physical than symptoms. You start breathing heavily, your heart goes over race, so you start sweating, you get all these physical symptoms as part of the stress, and then some people go into the panic attack, But if you learn certain techniques, whether it comes as a meditation or cognitive behavior therapy, these are the commonest sort of, statistically and evidence-based techniques, that are actually shaping this as we learned the brain, the structure of the brain, and controls the emotions and feelings. Stress is just emotion, it's reaction, physical reaction.
And it was my understanding from your presentation that building those mindful moments into your day was kind of a good strategy to help build that up, right?
Yeah. You start with a few minutes, and then you sort of you continuously daily, you can increase the time of meditation if you wish. You can start from 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then that do 10 minutes every day. For 8 weeks, you will notice the difference. I can promise you. It's evidence-based. It's not a woo-woo science here. As I said at the beginning, I'm not here to tell you the fairy tales here. It's really something that it's emerging evidence. It's really something that we should all pursue. I wouldn't spend a minute talking about it if it wasn't evidence-based information to help you guys.
So you had your chart with like the 6 areas to focus on, and obviously kind of smoking we're going to discount because hopefully no one's doing that anymore. If you kind of had to focus on one because, slice at a time and all of that, what would be the one that you would focus on first? Or do you think that's more individual based?
It's diet, I would say. Diet, sleep, and exercises. These are, if you're not doing none of the, if nothing you're doing well for your body, to nourish your body, to keep it fit, diet is first. It's difficult with exercises only to achieve the fitness, unless you're an Olympic champion and Paralympic champion, whatever, So if you eat well, you will notice a lot of improvement in your mental health, in your physical health, in your MS symptoms. You will become less anxious, less agitated, less depressed. And then you move on to sort of introducing exercises, meditation, mindfulness, and working, accordingly.
And we've got a question about EFT tapping therapy. Is that something that you would recommend?
I heard about this, but I don't practice myself. I don't recommend that to my patients, but there's no evidence base. But in a way, it sort of makes sense to me, because sort of a tapping is a sensory stimulus to your skin, let's say, right? So it sort of brings you to the reality, your present moment. The tapping activity, sort of reminding yourself, I'm here, I'm supporting myself, I can feel that. So again, it's like a distracting method. That you could call this part of the meditation, to be honest. Because it's sort of like, it's a grounded technique, in other words.
Amazing. Thank you for that. We've got questions about vitamin D spray, tablets or spray, or are they both equal?
I would suggest spray, because the vitamin D it's being diluted inside the fats, So capsules, fatty capsules that comes to, the capsules is much, much better. If you purchase tablets, not a worry at all. You could just have it with your meal time, like, fatty food. Like if you have dinner or lunch, just make sure that you take it with meal, basically, if it is a tablet. The rest, spray or capsules, are a form of the oil that is better absorbed within the gut. And some of the people buy vitamin D with a K. Actually, K regulates the vitamin K, regulates the absorption of the calcium within the gut. And it helps to prevent having extra calcium being absorbed by our guts, basically. Sort of the risk of the high dose of vitamin D is the high level of the calcium. That's the only worry that we may have. Although if it is below 10,000 international units, it's not that much of the worry. Like if it's 4,000 or 5,000, we don't worry about the calcium level because it's not toxic. Anything above 10,000 increase the risk of having high calcium level inside the serum if you're in your blood, and vitamin K regulates the calcium absorption. So abnormal calcium level in the body can accumulate in the soft tissue and can harm the soft tissue. That's sort of that's the worry that we may have as a clinician. So, and everyone else should think from that angle too.
Perfect, thanks. I know that like when people with MS exercise, they're often given all sorts of advice from all sorts of angles. What sort of school of philosophy do you subscribe to? Is it the stop when you're starting to feel tired? Is it push through when you're still young and fit and able? Where do you land on that?
Well, I quite often get this question, to be honest, and I think nothing is worse than wearing yourself off. And I think it's important to pace yourself, and particularly if you are a beginner, if you just started your exercise program, and making yourself to, that you feel exhausted after that is not a healthy, kind way of dealing with your body and mind, to be honest. You have to really take one step at a time, and you feel much, much better afterwards. And anything that makes you feel better is the way forward. Anything that makes you feel more exhausted, more fatigued and, pain, having more pains and aches in your body, although something that we notice, this phenomenon, which is called Udhoff's phenomenon, that temperature in your body that rises, can worsen your MS symptoms. It becomes more tingly, more painful, more symptoms people notice. It's because of the temperature change in the bodies. It's a well-classified phenomenon that we see a lot. And what I suggest is putting some cooling vests or cooling ties around the neck, cooling your body temperature down whilst you're exercising may help. Exactly applies to the having hot shower and hot bath. A lot of people can't tolerate the heat. It brings more symptoms. Legs become jelly. It's difficult to get out of the bath. After having, some women can't dry their hair after having hot showers. So just being mindful and cooling the temperatures is the way forward to living with this condition.
Amazing, thank you for that. Just two more questions. So one of our members has asked about oral contraception or contraception in general. Are there any sort of recommended forms of contraception for MS sufferers?
Okay, that's another topic that actually I'm meeting with GP doctor who's done the lifestyle medicine, and she runs the Women's Health Clinic. It's going to be a new podcast around the hormones and replacement and the contraception. So it's a separate topic. And just tune in and listen to BeewellwithMS upcoming episode on the women's health and hormones. We'll dive deep to cover that topic. It's an interesting one.
Thank you, Agne, for that. I know you mentioned how important gut health was to brain health and such. Is it recommended we take probiotics or?
Okay, interesting one. I think there is nothing better than having a good quality of food, loads of vegetables and fruit, and that will nourish your microbiome. It's very difficult to replace with the probiotics in the form of the capsule. You'll never get enough probiotics just getting the capsule. So you need to combine that with the vegetables and fruits, because that's the main food is forming the microbiota in your guts, and that's where it's all coming from. But on the days when you're extremely stressed, maybe you're at the uni, maybe your work is very demanding, and that you're not going to have a good quality of food, or you have some sort of maybe more junk food, which we all do, that there is a percentage that we do that because of our Western lifestyle. It's really busy and everything we need to juggle around and stuff, so it wouldn't harm you if you take probiotics, but it's difficult to in one capsule to get enough the concentration of the probiotics just taking the capsule. So you have to combine that with a good nourishing food, and on the days that you're not eating good quality of food, take the probiotics. It's not going to harm you.
Brilliant, thank you. We've actually just had a last minute comment. Is cryotherapy something that you would recommend for MS?
It's not evidence-based, so that's number one. There are some emerging evidence of the cold. Is this the same, the right interpretation? So cold therapy, cryotherapy. So it's anti-aging. It may be anti-inflammatory too, and if you combine that with sauna and, heat application is like a little shock to your body. It produces a growth hormone, which is anti-aging hormone, so by 20%, higher amount if you go to the sauna and then you go to and have a cold shower or cold bath, for example. So little shocks to the body can produce more activity in terms of the more chemicals are being released, the hormones are being released, and it sort of a balances in a way that we don't have a clear, good understanding how it all does, but some emerging evidence suggests that it's a boost of the antioxidants, and it really nourishes your body and wellness. It regulates your metabolism to start with, and it helps to maintain the good integrity and balance within the cells. So it's something that is coming, I think, but we haven't got, in particularly in MS, we haven't got evidence that it is helpful. It's probably good for your general health.
one last one, and it's actually something I do myself, so I'm very interested to find out. Oxygen therapy, is that something you would recommend?
Okay, again, it's not evidence-based information. We have to admit it's something that a lot of people are doing these days. Again, you can think from an angle. Probably, it gives you a bit more wellness and nourishing effect on your cells, at the cell distribution. Your cells producing more energy, and as a consequence, you feel much better about this. But but it's not evident. Clearly, there is no evidence to support this in multiple sclerosis. That it's not replacing your cells. It's not giving more oxygen to your cells in a way. Your brain cells is not replacing or producing more myelination or demyelination. Maybe some evidence will come later on, but we haven't got this at this time moment, unfortunately. But if it makes you feel better, this is what I say to people. If it makes you feel like you feel more energetic, you can do more things. Even if it is a placebo effect, go for it.
Perfect.
Just do it.
Can't hurt anyway, can it?
No.
I don't think we've got any more questions unless Amy knows of any more.
If there are any more questions, I think there might be a few. For some reason, I can't see direct messages, so I am sorry if we've missed any. But if there are any more questions, please send me a message after this, either on Facebook or WhatsApp if you've got my number.
And I could answer that in the format of the podcast. Your questions will be my podcast content. So let's have this agreement. I'm here to help you, but equally you're helping me. Yes, please do share your questions after this event.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I don't want to keep you all any longer because it's a bit longer than we originally said. But if there are any, you can email me, message me. Any other questions, just let me know, and we'll get an answer for you. I'll pass them on to Dr. Agne. So yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you, of course, to Dr. Agne for coming along and giving such a great presentation and such a the meditation was amazing. I think everyone will agree. So I'm really happy that you'll be sending us that. Thank you to Hannah for facilitating the questions. And thank you all for coming. It's been really lovely to see you all. I hope you found it interesting and informative. And yeah, thank you so much. You can see Agne, but we're getting lots of lovely comments about how great it was.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you
so much, Agne.
Thank you. For your evenings. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.